Bro, I go. Okay. Right. So we are back with the thinking hat, and this time around we have the usual suspects back with us, Dumi and Desiree. Yeah. Let's not get into what happened to them last week, but
No, no,
so
it's not that I got abducted by a white man. That's not true.
by a white man.
Maybe a white man.
Male, not white man.
Did I have a thing for Caucasians? No, I
Okay,
don't. No, I
anyway,
don't.
Getting back to the point. So this week we decided to talk about a specific topic, which is how movies and TV shows impact the way we think. Right. So now, how we decide the topics, we don't have like a specific way to decide it, right? Like
Of course.
sometimes it's suggested by our friends. Sometimes I force the topic on you guys, like
Like this
this
week.
week's
Like
topic,
this week's
right?
topic, yes,
This
exactly.
week.
So like sometimes I saw a couple of comments in the in our previous week's video as well. So do we have like a specific way of selecting the topics? Like I mean, like what do you think?
We put a gazette and then pass it in parliament, then it goes to the ages department, then the legals draftsman,
Right.
and then final approval again from parliament, and then
Who
it's
prints this gazette?
huh?
That's-
Who prints
Movie
it?
printer
We will do.
Okay,
Get
movie
that
printer
printed,
Mugana.
get that
Ah.
printed, right, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
there
So now, personally, this is a topic that I've been dying to speak about.
Oh,
You
you
have been
don't
dying to
say.
speak.
You don't say.
You don't say.
Right. No, because movies and TV shows.
To some of y'all who don't know, Surit is a movie and a TV series fanatic.
I am,
Fanatic
I am, yeah.
in the sense that we all have genres that we like, that
yeah.
we specifically listen to, but or watch. You don't have that.
No, I watch
You
everything.
watch everything. Yeah, from porn to more porn, you watch everything.
I do.
indeed.
So yeah, this is the thing, right? So now, growing up, I was very specific about the content I was exposed to in the terms of TV shows and movies, right? Because for some weird reason, even as a kid, I thought like it'll impact the way I think,
Are you
right?
talking about Ninja Turtles?
Ninja Turtles. Where did that come from?
Well,
Podi
Ninja
Kale
Turtles were there.
Podikala Balappa.
Apirajib.
Apirajibbu. No. So Cow the Boy was one of my personal favorites.
Oh, yeah,
right?
of course.
Wait, the
Um,
Cow the Boy was when you were small. They used to show Cow the Boy.
oh,
Cow.
oh,
Yes.
Surit is not that old, okay, gosh.
How old is she?
How old do you think we are?
I don't know.
I'm so confused right now. Anyway, yeah, so Cow the Boy used to be one of my personal favorites. But anyway, so right off the bat, I'll start with one specific movie that I wanted to talk about, right? But then obviously we're not going to go into detail, right? For example, now when I talk about this movie, I'll try to keep the synopsis of the movie as short as possible. And obviously, the point of talking about this movie is to show how this relates into our main topic, which is how movies and TV shows impact the way we think, right? So there's a movie called Arrival. I'm not sure if you guys have seen it. Basically, it's a
Was
it's
this
a-
a
it's a-
2012 arrival?
I think so,
I
right?
think, okay.
Or after that, much later. I'm not too sure. But anyway, basically, it's a first contact movie. Basically, what that means is it's a movie where human beings come into contact with alien life, right?
Yeah.
But this isn't a Arrival isn't a typical first contact movie in the sense that it doesn't deal with war. Like in all the other freaking alien movies we've seen, like Independence Day to what
Battle
else?
Los Angeles.
Battle Los Angeles to you name it, right?
Yeah.
So what was the interesting thing about Arrival was that the point of view of this movie was language, right? For a first contact movie, yeah, exactly. I found it very interesting, so I dived deep into the philosophy of the movie as I always
you
do.
do.
And I try to pay close attention to the movie while I was watching it, right? So basically, like I said, let me give you like a very short synopsis of the movie, right? So it was a
Seetalai.
was a first contact movie, and so now usually when these alien beings land on Earth, they always select US for some weird reason, right?
It's a modern indeed.
Yeah,
It's
every
always
time.
every
Well,
time
except for
it's-
Godzilla.
Godzilla?
Godzilla went into Tokyo, but yeah.
he wasn't an alien, you bug.
But
came from
technically alien. You
the-
don't have that
Oh
gene.
yeah.
What? Godzilla came from underground.
Yes,
Yeah.
but due to a experiment. Whatever. What's your definition of
Of
alien?
an alien.
Extraterrestrial.
Yeah.
Okay,
It have to
okay,
be an
you're-
extraterrestrial.
I'm talking about extraterrestrials
Ah, okay,
specifically,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Okay,
okay.
in that case, yeah. Get into specific. Okay, anyway, okay, right. So, but in this particular movie, the alien spaceships land in pretty much all the cities around the world, right? So China, Russia. No, Arrival. The movie I'm talking about, right?
Oh yeah, I
So,
watched that.
on him.
Yeah.
I was talking about the movie Arrival, right?
It's,
So
not, it's not Jivaka's fault anyway. So yeah.
is it not?
Is it? Is it
He's-
conspiracies?
He's
Like the abduction
he's
of me by a
blaming
white
it on what climate change.
Global warming.
Yeah, global warming. Anyway, right. So this, as I was saying, this specific alien spaceship, let's call it, lands on the U.S. soil, right? And then they basically, the spaceship lays dormant for a period of time, but they let the U.S. military, the humans, the citizens there, basically access the spaceship. They come into the spaceship, and then in the spaceship there's a small room, basically, and the room, there's a small glass wall in the middle of the room that divides the human beings from the aliens. So aliens are on one side, the humans are on one side, right? So the US military hires a language specialist to basically learn the alien language and in turn teach them our language as well. So
How
now,
would the never mind.
now the United States military wants to ask the aliens one very specific question. It's one sentence. So I'm letting you guys guess. Can any of you all tell me what that question might have been?
The aliens loved the US government to ask them
No.
questions.
The US government wants the language specialist who is human to ask the aliens one very specific question.
Okay.
Can you all guess what that question is?
Why'd you come to Earth? What purpose?
Exactly. So it's one line. Wow, that's really okay.
I
Well,
don't know
that's
when I watched
obvious,
this.
you bugger.
Yeah. What is your?
I don't think she
what is
watched the
your-
movie though.
I can't.
No.
She doesn't have to watch the movie. What is your purpose on earth, right?
Yeah.
Those very specific words. So she says, now before I ask that very specific question from the aliens, first we need to know that they understand what a question is, right?
Yeah.
So you need to break down those words into individual words, that you need to break down the sentence into individual words. And then, for example, if you take the first word, what? This is going to sound really funny. What is what, right? What is the question? So you need to make sure they understand
Wait,
what is, right?
Say what again, motherfucker?
Anyway,
Violation.
So-
Violation. Sorry.
will we be taken out of YouTube for that? Anyway,
The YouTube can take it out of me. Don't worry.
so somehow as time goes on, she ends up teaching the aliens our language and ends learning the alien language as well, right? And during this process, I'll keep it very short. During this process, she realizes that the way she perceives time starts to change, right? So now, that sentence, right? In English language, every sentence has a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? So basically, it's linear. There's a past, there's a present, and a future, right? So
What you mean to say is
it's
time
basically
is linear.
no. What I mean to say is it's the way we think, right?
Okay, yeah.
We think that time is
In a
linear,
linear
right? So
yes.
so our language is based upon that thought, that idea, right? It's based on how we perceive time. Our language is based on how we perceive time,
True enough.
right? So now on this particular glass wall, she writes that question, right? What is your purpose here? And then she waits for the aliens to respond, right? And she becomes really surprised and fascinated about once she sees their language. So they kind of project the letters all at once, and it's not linear. It's not in one line. Rather, it's a circle, right? So the circle, obviously, in a circle, there's no beginning or there's no end. So, which means the aliens perceive time very differently. They are higher dimensional beings, which means their language. Once you understand their language, you perceive time differently as well, right?
And
so she starts having visions of a future, past, and obviously the present, right? So it's a very interesting movie. So my point of all of this is, the way you perceive time depends on language. For me personally, the content that I was exposed to, the content that we are exposed to, changes language. That was the way that I perceived it, right? So basically, what I'm saying is it's all connected, right? So, and the content that we are exposed to plays a big role in our life.
There is one
right?
thing that I want to add. When
Yeah.
I say Schrodinger's cat, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
To be or not to be.
No, the Big
I
Bang
mean,
Theory.
is it?
The Big-
You're talking about the okay,
The
right?
TV show, The Big Bang Theory, because that's the first time.
Okay, so that wasn't the first time for me. I had read it before.
of course,
Right,
of course.
but
but
He has
yeah.
told
some
us
other
this
audience-
before.
Huh?
You had told us this before.
Yeah, way before, right?
Yeah.
So-
But I guess our listeners would be confused as to what the
Schrodinger's
Schrodinger's
cat
cat is.
is.
Are we going to explain it?
You
Or
will.
will they be bored?
No, no.
No, we shouldn't explain. What
We
Schrodinger's
shouldn't
cat is.
explain.
Okay, you can
If
like
you
look it
can
up.
Maybe,
if you-
Yeah.
maybe, Google it.
Yeah.
yeah,
Look it up.
Google it.
Right. Yeah, you were saying to me.
So it's an interesting conversation that you brought on
Yeah.
with reference to language, and for me personally, that has been the case for the longest time, because all I have been exposed to, well, mainly was first it was Star Wars universe, and then onwards
I
it's
haven't
all
still
about
watched Star Wars. By the way.
We should talk about Star Wars.
No,
That's
I haven't watched it.
You haven't watched Star Wars?
Watched Star Wars.
What kind of man are you?
Yes, I
Are you
What kind of man
you're
are
a Star Trek fan?
No, I haven't watched Star Trek.
Yeah, so that's what I'm. That's again another good point.
Yeah.
Like now, for example, this morning you played a ringtone from Godfather, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm a big fan of the movie, but I couldn't remember that ringtone, right?
Exactly.
So we all have been exposed to
Al
different
Pacino.
content, and that's perfectly all right. Like not everyone has to have watched The Godfather or Star Wars, right? As long as, I mean, you don't watch dumb shit like K-dramas and Hindi
wait,
soap
wait,
operas.
wait.
But there are some. I'm
No,
not.
no,
I'm
it's-
not.
it's-
Yeah.
It's, so we shouldn't do the whole segregation of whether one's entertainment value. So whatever we attach to
Okay.
the entertainment value of a certain item does not mean that someone
Correct.
else would
You're
attach
right.
the same
Absolutely.
entertainment
Absolutely.
value to it. But the other way around, some people purely watch movies just because they can understand. Sorry?
Mike,
Okay, sorry. You can't hear what I'm saying.
your opinion matters to me.
My opinion matters.
Aww.
Thanks.
To Jeeva.
So cute.
Not to me.
Hashtag me too.
Hashtag me too. Oud bhai. man.
Alright.
I don't care. man.
Hey, Udbhai now. Right. Can you hear me now? Oh, good. Okay. So, in terms of how some perceive watching movies, I think it's different for the three of us. I don't know about that though.
The four of us.
The four of us.
Yeah.
The four of us watches movies just for not for the entertainment value, but to learn from something from it as
You
well.
mean
I
like
mean,
that? So okay.
yeah,
Right.
because I mean, come on, you see something like Pulp Fiction or you see something like Godfather, you indirectly learn something about the culture that was there in 1970s or the 1990s, and that's the reason why Quentin Tarantino and all of these great guys back in the day made those movies, because I mean, Citizen Kane was way ahead of his time, and I'm sure people in the audience would not know what Citizen Kane is,
So
but
Mashang,
that's
sorry, to that point.
Yeah.
To add to that point, basically, so while I was studying HR, I had an assessment on. Basically, we had to do an assessment on some great leaders of history, right? So I went with Alexander the Great, and I did not study him. I didn't read a single book. I just ended up watching 2 or 3 movies that were out there, right?
and then you would understand.
And then I did the assessment.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly.
So it doesn't. I mean, the content, like you said. So there's a friend of mine. She's kind of like us. She's very selective of the content that she's exposed
Of
to, the
course.
movies, the TV shows that she watches. Right.
Yeah.
Very smart girl. But when she comes home after a hard day of work, she just watches something dumb. Like, let's say, when I mean dumb, something easy to receive.
Yeah, so
Is
something like Friends,
something like
like
Friends,
yeah,
Big Bang Theory, comedy
Theory.
based,
Yeah, exactly.
rom-com, right?
Exactly.
I do the same,
Yeah.
right? Like,
We all
what
do
I
the same,
is-
I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we all do the same. So
Yeah.
there are times that we watch, that we are exposed to this content just for its entertainment value only, right?
Of course, yeah.
But also, I guess the three of us, probably with Desiree as well, in contrast to that, we are also very selective of some of the content we watch, because we want these movies to make us smarter, or that, at least that's how I perceive it, right?
I see. Smarter in what way? More knowledgeable, you mean?
Knowledgeable, right?
Okay.
So, for example, you watch a biography or something like Alexander the Great.
We
like I
can't
just
we
said,
can't
right?
make Chaturanga smarter by watching more movies.
No, because he already
I'm
knows more than
already
us.
smart.
Sorry, yeah. Okay.
Indeed.
Some සමා වෙන්න චතුරාර්ය.
No, now අපේ topic එක is how this damn thing influences us, no? So I want to bring a very small example, right? That is, if you take a ping pong ball, cut it in half, put it on your eye, and tape it on your eye, right? 2 ping pong balls on your eye. If you lie down flat, if you play radio static at the background, you hallucinate.
Did you? Okay,
It's
you've
a-
tried this.
No, it's a proven theory. I haven't. I'm yet to find 2 ping pong balls.
You need one.
You need one, exactly. Yeah.
මුටත් ඕනේ මුවත් එක කරන්න මලොත් එහෙම බං එක පාර.
මචං මුඩ ගන්න බෑ.
Why are we going into Inception right now?
No,
The dreams,
what
the
I mean
dreams.
is, like, if that's basically noise, right? Static.
Yeah.
And we are closing our eyes. It's ping pong balls. I mean, nothing. There is no projection happening into your brain or your eye, but yet that is able to stimulate some part of your brain to make sure you
hallucinate.
see pictures, right?
Okay.
So my theory is, if that's a possibility, what we watch, like, there are like feel good movies, there are feel good, like, for example, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, right?
Yeah.
You feel good. It's
You don't feel
lame
good, but
AF.
it's lame.
No, it's lame,
But it's
but
fun.
you watch it because that ending is nice, right?
Yeah.
You want those two buggers to be together, and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
So those things actually definitely has a negative or a positive impact. And then you watch something like, for example, you watch something like, let's say, something that's bloody, like Spartacus or something like that. You see a lot of blood.
Game of
and you're
Thrones.
like, you don't feel, even to a,
GOT.
I don't think we can go through the whole episode without mentioning Game of
But
Thrones.
this is the thing, though. So now, since you mentioned Spartacus, right? Yes, there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of gore, and obviously the bloodshed is massively exaggerated in the TV show, right? But dude, the story, the politics, right, and the plot of the entire story, the
No,
way it was
definitely.
written, right? I just like story-wise, it was one of the best written
Definitely.
TV shows I've ever watched,
100%.
right? So that's the thing. So it catered to two separate audiences there. People who, I mean, there's a group of audience who obviously like the blood and gore and the violence, right? It's
Weirdos.
yeah, like Jivaka.
Jivaka likes violence.
Jivaka likes balance.
So and then obviously there's the group that follows the story and watches it just for the story, like me and like you guys. So it catered to both the audiences.
No,
right?
absolutely. I'm
It was a
not
mix.
saying one is bad and the other is good. That's
course
not what I'm
not.
trying to say.
Yeah.
I'm trying to say that those have, like, you would, as you pointed out, one would differentiate the fact that, okay, graphics, blood, and then story. Like, that itself is you being influenced by the whole output.
That influence is quite interesting that you speak of, because I remember watching Silence of the Lambs back in the day. I think when I was a kid, and well, that was not supposed to be. Then I watched when I was a kid, but that exposed me to the whole idea of there are cannibals in the world, and a doctor
Yeah.
who may be one of the most smartest guy there ever was back in that day.
Yeah.
He's used to eating humans, and he likes like feeding on humans. So the whole idea, the whole notion of there are people who exist who likes to eat other people, that was such a common fact to me back in the day, because I mean, I know that there are tribes that are in Papua New Guinea who still does eat human flesh up to this day, but that notion of eating another human just because it's flesh, that was something very simple to me back in the day, because I watched that particular movie. And what I try to say is that, you see, it ends up with the whole dilemma of violence and how we perceive it.
But the again, the idea that you are able to learn new concepts from a movie, I agree with you. Like things like, what you said, information, documentary type things, but
So-
whether they are factually accurate is solely based on what the director
Yeah.
and producer and all those
I'm
buggers
guessing,
want.
yeah, Dr. Hannibal Lecter was a
But
fictional
then,
character, but
see, we came across the whole Schrodinger's cat, right? It's an established scientific theory, right? And we discovered it through Big Bang
course,
Theory.
yeah.
I mean, there are. I'm not saying all of them are, but for example, let's take Sri Lankan movies that are made. Sri Lankan, there are like 90% of the movies that are made in Sri Lanka are to do with like some king, no.
Yeah.
But whether they're actually factually correct are like questions that can be asked because
Of course,
I remember, like for example, the time frame that they take for each movie seems to be uniform.
Right.
Like it can be King Dutugamunu that we're talking about, it can be King Balagamba that we're talking about, it can be
I don't
Parakram
think
Bahu.
there are any movies of Balagamba, but yeah.
No, I mean irrelevant. There
He's
is
a good
Aloka
king, but
Udapadi is
yes.
about King Valagamba.
Is it?
Yeah.
Ah, okay. I've not watched it.
So all of these various time frames, the picture, the outlook same remains the same. It's the same, probably the same. Actually, Dutugamunu and Balagamba were shot at the same location. We've been there. All
Right.
three of us.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we were.
But if you actually look at the timeline, they were separated by
Obviously.
yeah.
But in terms of your childhood or what you've exposed to, and for people who don't know Desri, Desri is from a, how would I say, conventional background.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah. So what were you exposed to back in the day?
Well, I know people find this very weird, and even my sister finds it very weird. But I didn't like cartoons when I was small. Yeah.
Oh wow.
So I used to like literally get up because
We are cartoon haters now. We literally started with Ninja Turtles, but okay.
No. But those were nice. But the other cartoons that they used to show, I used to not like. So I used to literally get up and go while the TV used to be on. So I was not much of a TV person, and even of late, I'm not too much of a movie person. But I get really drawn to documentaries. That's like my go-to thing, and I watch a lot of crime-related documentaries, which is very intriguing. And even when it comes to books, I get really drawn to those things.
To crime, basically.
To cry.
To crime.
Is that
You
an
die
influence?
now.
Is that an influence? Because
Yeah, definitely.
wait, someone who watched Seven, and you should watch Seven, the movie.
Oh,
That's by Brad Pitt.
I
Someone
think-
would have
I
watched.
think
Yeah, we
I
both watched it
introduced you
together.
to-
I
yeah,
guess so.
the movie.
But I mean, that whole movie gives you an idea of how to be a serial killer. And to get away from it, or at
still
least to
interested,
play with people's emotions and mind, right? So
yeah.
I guess so. And people could become serial
So
killers by watching
what
these
did you
movies.
like about watching documentaries back in the day?
No, not even back in the day. Even right now, when I get a little free time in office, I just go on YouTube and I watch true crime because those are actual stories. But see, part of me gets terrified of thinking, my gosh, my own family can do this to
just
me.
for clarification, this is violent crimes or this is
So
any crimes?
So it's like
Everything.
Violent.
Or Pablo Escobar crimes, or Harvey or Hannibal Lecter crimes.
I'm not. But they're like real. I mean, they're terrifying crimes.
Dead people killing.
Dead people. Like families killing their own family members, kind of crime.
That's a normal thing. Okay.
Yes.
Is it?
Is it?
Not in my family.
Just saying, no? Just saying. Okay.
Just putting it out there.
So, why do you choose to watch that very specific? Do you know, like, does it happen on a subconscious level, or are you like, do you know why
Drawn
you
to
chose to?
criminality.
Or is it just because
No,
what we've been saying before, and is it for knowledge reasons that you watch
It
it?
is actually
Yeah.
for knowledge reasons because it kind of gives a very real, as in it shows what reality looks like.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes we just watch things. I know, like you said, even when I'm really tired, let's say I'm having a really long day at work, and when I'm having dinner at office, I just switch on and watch Big Bang Theory just to laugh at something because like my day is so bad. But actually when you watch like documentaries, you realize how such people do exist. So
Absolutely.
which is very good. It's like a reality check here, people. But I don't get overly terrified about it, thinking that everyone
that's
out
terrifying
there
us
is
right now.
bad.
That's terrifying us right now.
So,
But don't worry, I'm not like prone to kill people or anything like that.
How would we know?
You never know. You never know.
I mean, like, I have a friend who's like heavily into
Serial killers.
serial killers and like watching. I think you are as well. No, I was talking about another specific
You
friend
went to
because
jail twice.
she What?
He went to jail twice for serial.
Okay, right.
Right. Okay.
What?
And now it's on YouTube. You can put it out on YouTube.
Is it on YouTube? Prison Break is about me.
Machan, Jeevika, do not edit that part out because
Leave it as it is.
we want the authorities
World
to
to know.
the world. to know. Anyway,
The world to know
so
that
as
I
I
went
was
to jail.
saying, I have a
Thanks.
friend of mine, right? So she actually freaked her husband out because she keeps watching these. She was a kid as well, but she keeps watching these serial killer shows like non-stop, right?
Mindhunter.
And Mindhunter, Making of a Murderer or whatever that's called, right?
Yeah, Making of a Murderer and then Manhunt, Unabomber.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. All those stuff. But she knows where to draw the line. It's like she's very intrigued by it, but she knows for a fact that she will not end up being a serial killer, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, like I'm a big fan of anything to do with. So, Joker is my favorite fictional character of all time, right? So, I have studied his psyche, like what made him the Joker, and basically, if I put it in layman's term, it was one bad day, right? That's what they say. One bad day is what turned this guy, this character, Arthur Fleck, as is known in the new movie, into the Joker, right? So I have studied his psyche like since childhood, but I knew for a fact that I will not freaking turn into a bloody serial killer just because Joker was my favorite fictional character of all time,
But
right?
now you say with saying that
Yeah.
we know that Heath Ledger actually believed that he was Joker.
Correct. So again, it's a very narrow line, right? So
Right,
you need to
yes.
know, you need to be careful.
Yeah,
that's
of
that's what I'm saying. So simple as that. You need to be very careful. You need to be aware of the content that you are exposed to as well.
Actually, yeah, because really, if you feel like you are crossing the line, then you should know to stop it
Yeah,
because that could lead to very, very bad consequences.
No, but the difference between people who are violent and us, and how I perceive it, is that we have a different upbringing, right? For honestly, I've studied serial killers all my life because I've been fascinated by them, like Ted Bundy, like
Oh.
Jack the Ripper,
Damn.
all the greats, right? I call them greats because no, I call them greats with a reason. They never got caught. They were good. They were smart enough to get away with it. And for 17 years, they were running behind the Unabomber. And Unabomber is a person who had 187 IQ. That's more than Einstein, right? So Unabomber basically is brilliant, but he was a serial killer end of the day. So the difference that I see or perceive between those people and us who watches them,
You say.
so the difference between them and how we see it is that we have a conscious upbringing by our parents. So we it doesn't matter because
Conscious
I
upbringing.
know
Does it mean that you're
how
alive?
long have I known both of y'all? It's a conscious upbringing. Yes.
Conscious.
Yeah, conscious. That's what I meant. So conscious upbringing, which means to say is that we are basically brought up to have a conscience that to separate conscious upbringing.
So
What means to say is that we have a conscious.
Are you actually googling the word?
You should
Anyway.
Google the word. So
Yeah.
what I mean to say is that we knew from small days.
CO. CO on shuns.
On shuns.
Okay.
So what I mean to say is that we've had that line drawn way smaller in our lives.
Conscious is aware of and responding to one's surroundings.
Yes. So, and our parents basically in our upbringing made our conscious mind into to have a line. What is good,
Sure,
what is bad.
sure. Yeah.
Right? It doesn't matter whether we are proven out to be, anti-God or agnostic or atheist or conservative. Either way, conscience doesn't change from one person to another. It's the same.
Correct. Yeah.
Because society has made it the same. Right?
Yeah.
So the people who go against the norms of society, they should have a reason to. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
They should have a ticking point. And you spoke.
You mean like a personal experience?
Yes.
Okay.
But personal experience for a large period of time. You need to be abused or abused not in physical way, but mental abuse.
Well,
is
both.
also
It can be either. It can be
exactly,
either.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like the joke.
From the ages of 5 to maybe ages of 13, if
Correct.
you were
That age
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah,
very
yeah.
important
exactly
for a kid.
that's
Yeah.
very important. I mean, there are serial killers who redefine that theory as well, who were
Sure.
basically
But that's very rare,
loved,
isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
who were basically loved when they were small, but then again
Yeah.
they turn out to be serial killers. But what I'm trying to say is that it's your upbringing. So it doesn't matter whether you keep on watching Hannibal Lecter or the serial
crime.
killers that true crime
Yeah, yeah,
or True Detective.
yeah.
Matthew McConaughey is back, by the way. It doesn't matter.
I've never watched that.
Umbo Twitter.
He wanted me to, but I couldn't follow.
All right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's my whole theory of watching. Even though you watch crime, it doesn't change the fact that who you are.
So now in Mindhunt itself, what's the name of the guy? I think Ed, right? The
Yeah.
big made guy, the
Ed,
cop,
yeah.
the guy who was a cop who turned into a serial killer, right?
I don't think we
With
can
the heels.
explain how he murdered his mother.
No. I'm not talking about that,
That's
right?
explicit content.
So basically, how he said in the interview itself that how he managed to get away with all these murders is by watching cop shows,
Exactly.
right?
Wow.
Right.
Because it was
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it's
Real
true,
stuff.
and it's a real serial killer.
Right?
He's the one who kept the heels, right?
Yeah.
of the men?
He's the one who kept the heels, and we are not going to
Fascinated
talk
by-
about how he massacred the mother.
No,
when
we shouldn't.
Anyway, so basically, he said in an interview that the only reason he managed to escape the authorities is because he was a big fan of all these cop shows and he followed every single episode. Right? He was a cop show fanatic, and everything that they went into detail about in these cop shows, he paid attention to. He studied them, and he used them against the actual cops out there. Right? So
He's a smart guy.
I mean, if you talk about examples as to how TV shows and movies influence the way you think, isn't that the best?
That
Right?
is one of the
that
best.
is-
Yeah.
And also the other thing. Now, what you mentioned was Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and you said that it is more sort of a feel-good thing. But don't we feel good when we watch something like Batman also, or Joker maybe?
Depends on what makes you feel good.
Correct.
Depends on what
It's
makes you feel.
all
But,
relative,
but
I
end of
guess,
the day,
yeah.
we want the hero to win.
Or do we? I've always saved the villains. I guess you know this.
Really?
That's why the Joker is my favorite.
So,
obviously.
see now technically, Joker is not a villain.
A villain
He's
is a
an
person who has a vision for the world, and a hero is someone who always tries to stop that vision. Right?
But the categorization
So that was my idea.
But the categorization of Joker is an anti-hero, not a villain.
Joker is a villain.
No. He becomes an anti-hero also.
In
some
different
cases.
iterations,
Yeah,
yes, okay.
in certain iterations, because end of the day
Joker
there are.
villain නැහැ කියලා කියන්නේ පොයි මේ ඉන්ටර්නෙට් එක පුපුරයි. People will kill you.
I mean, you can perceive Joker as human.
He is
How can you
human. Joker is human.
I know, but people say
Yeah,
that it's
You mean you can empathize with the character, right?
Exactly.
Well, yeah, sure.
After,
You can.
definitely after this, like
The
The
new
latest
version.
one.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
latest one, because we saw all his sticking points throughout his
Yeah.
life, and
So now, since you brought up Batman, right? The reason why I always thought, and
he's not a hero, by the way.
who?
Batman is not a hero.
What's he saying, man?
He's an anti-hero.
මා අඬනවා.
I know.
He's not a hero.
Okay, let
How
me-
does he fight crime?
He's a vigilante, but
Exactly.
that's what it's called. But
Yeah.
okay, fine. In that sense, he's a vigilante. Okay, he's not
There
a
we go.
hero like Superman who has moral, moral
But
standards,
Superman
But
right?
he's also
Mistakes.
trying to save his city, so
Yeah.
In his
Gotham.
own messed up
Yeah.
way, right?
Yeah.
But my point was, I always thought that the Joker was way smarter than Batman. Now, Batman is a fictional character who's said to have a big IQ, right?
Yeah.
In that particular world.
Yeah.
But now, so the Joker isn't a person necessarily with a higher IQ than Batman, but the fact that he lacks moral standing puts him 2 to 10 steps ahead of Batman every single time, right? So Batman is bound by laws, by rules.
Yeah.
Joker has no rules, and for that reason, he can always win. He can always be 10 to 20 steps ahead of Batman, right?
I don't think it's rules that you speak of, but morals.
Well, yeah, that's. I was being general about it. Yeah,
Well,
right.
I mean, if you
Yeah.
call him a villain, he obviously goes against
Against
the
the
rules.
rules.
Yeah, right. Right. So let me try to wrap my head around this particular quote I heard in Man of Steel. Right. So basically, he fights this particular person from his home planet who is an alien to the people of Earth. So basically, they are a much advanced civilization, right? And while this particular character fights Superman, she says this very interesting quote. Let me try to see if I remember it right. Basically she says, no, basically now while the battle while during the battle, right, Superman tries to save the people of the city while trying to, fight her as well, right? So he has two things in mind at the same time.
Yeah.
But in her mind, it's just to kill Superman, right? It's
Yeah,
one thing, and
exactly.
she's very focused.
Yeah.
And then, so she says to him at one point, the fact that you have a moral standing gives me
The
an evolutionary advantage
advantage.
against you. And
Exactly. I
if
remember
history
this
has proved anything, is that evolution always wins, right? So my point is, like, I kind of have this idea that as you move into a higher IQ and as you evolve, that certain moral standings degrade, right? Like it's certain moral standings degrade,
Yeah.
that you see them as completely unnecessary, right?
Yeah,
Because
I
for
think-
example, if you take people with high IQ that
Einstein.
they are very socially awkward,
Exactly.
right?
Einstein.
So-
Einstein used to stand as his umbrella while the umbrella was sitting on the chair.
Yeah, I mean they do weird
Yeah.
shit, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you take a very simple example
actually
like
true.
Big Bang Theory, you know how awkward Sheldon is, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's the best example you can use. And why is he awkward? Because he has a high IQ, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Know how
I
awkward
mean,
I am.
No, I mean,
My high
basically,
IQ.
basically, Isaac Newton.
So
Isaac-
Chaturanga is a social butterfly, so which means
He's a Samanalaya. I didn't know this.
Oh.
I'm from the
But we're going
Part
into, going into Isaac Newton, and I mean, your theory is correct. Isaac
Yeah.
Newton had two mental breakdowns, and he always thought you can't challenge Isaac Newton.
But that's because he didn't have
work.
sex. He died a virgin. I think.
That's up to
I
him.
think there needs to be a balance, right?
That's up to him.
So
Yeah,
speaking-
exactly. But
Don't
I
discuss
mean,
it.
going into the movies that influenced me, and this one particular movie that I speak of is 13 Hours, Soldiers of Benghazi.
My-
For the people who
I've not
just
seen it, but
That's a
yeah,
good
let it-
movie.
just watched it.
Okay,
It's
you
a-
have seen this?
It's it's an action movie. It's just a simple action movie. It's about a CIA base in, I think, Tehran.
Baghdad.
Baghdad. Yeah, Baghdad, and they are trying to escape before. No, sorry, Libya. That's
Yeah,
Libya.
Benghazi.
Benghazi.
You think
Yeah.
Benghazi.
Benghazi. Sorry for the audience. But they are trying to escape because before the 21 February, they call the 20th February or 17th Feb.
ISIS
17th Feb, try to knock them over or kill them. But there is one particular quote that hit me so hard in between, because for my background, I am Buddhist and Catholic. So I have the way of life of Buddha, but I was taught to believe in God. But there was one particular quote in that which said, all the gods, all the heavens, all the hells are within you.
Right.
Which means
That's
to say,
in another movie as well. Oh, obviously from some book. But yeah,
yeah,
that's
exactly.
not just-
That would have been from a book, but the first time I saw it was there, and that's just before this guy gets killed.
Yeah.
Right.
And the killing doesn't have any impact on me, but however, that particular quote
Stuck with you.
stuck with me, because I mean, end of the day, that is true.
Yeah.
Your conscience
For sure,
is
for
what
sure.
tells you whether you believe in God, you believe in hell, and you believe in heaven,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, yeah, we are touching on religion. I think we
I
should
mean,
leave
we are
this.
not touching on religion.
What I'm saying
What
is
I'm
that's a very
religion.
that's a very interesting thing to talk about,
Yeah.
right? How your influence, I mean, how your upbringing and how your religious beliefs,
Yeah, exactly.
shape your thinking as well, which
Exactly.
we'll leave for another episode.
That's a
so
completely
let me
different
move into
episode.
something very, I mean, something more fun, right? Desiree, do you enjoy watching soap operas like these Hindi soap dramas?
No, I am actually very thankful that growing up, my mum never liked watching all of these.
You were lucky.
You were lucky,
You were
right?
lucky.
Because the run they pair of a certain channel.
A certain
We can bash
Sorry,
TV channels. I think.
Chaturanga, but you weren't working there at
Yeah,
that
yeah.
time, so
No, it's Ramdepa still continues.
sorry.
Well, it got more audience right now, at least for the day.
The golden 2 hours,
Yeah,
if I
yeah.
may.
yeah.
The golden 2 hours. So, and
it's
I
pretty
actually realized how advantageous that was for me, because like when I used to go to school, all the kids used to be like catching up on what they missed, and I'm just like, it's a whole bunch of bullshit. Why? You can focus on something else during that time, and it just wastes your time, right? And it's just people being dramatic. And see, I wore these for the purpose of to symbolize
Close.
how
Jeeva, close.
close
Okay.
Yes, you were saying.
how the golden 2 hours work, because they used to show very impractical things, like people dolled up at home.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So we were not that lucky. My grandparents basically were
Our parents.
big fans of the Randapa and all these Hindi
Golden
soap
2
dramas.
hours.
Yes.
Your parents?
Right.
Probably.
And then at one point, my parents watched it as well because they had nothing better to watch on TV. But then later on, they gave up. But my biggest problem was when my sister started watching it. So I tried to convince. I convinced my parents to convince my sister to not watch it, please.
You know how I overcome that?
Yeah.
I bought Netflix and gave it to her.
Oh.
Have
Every
this-
time I log into your account, they
Yeah.
will need a thing.
So,
Exactly.
This was way back. I bought cable and I told her to watch like
exactly. There
Animal
you go.
Planet or I don't know whatever shit. Yeah. So we were talking about the golden 2 hours.
By the way, T miraculously appeared.
Yeah, it just appeared.
Appeared out of thin air.
Out of the blue.
We should do that, man. Right before the cut, we should just do this. And then
And then the tea is here. Right. Okay. Next time. Sure. Yeah, we were talking about the Randapa as it was called
Yeah,
on a
back in the day.
particular channel. Particular
Which will not be named.
which
No, right, okay. Now, since you're on the topic, I'll tell you an interesting story. I don't know whether you guys watch Tamil movies. I do. Right?
Some. I was Surya's movie.
in Kadal. I'm not.
Oh, that famous line of yours.
No, what I'm trying to say is there are certain Tamil movies that are very thought-provoking. Like they hit you right in that place in your heart where you're like, shit. There is this movie. Huh?
Talk to the mic.
Talk to the mic. Right.
You
Sorry,
should
man.
know this better.
Never mind, clip on.
You are in media.
Clip on. අපි ඩවුලන්නේ නැහැ.
අවුලක්
මේ
ගාගන කිප් වුණේ මං කියනවා.
මේ මූණ දිහා
මයික් එකේ අල ගන්නවලු ස්ලෝ ටේප් එකද
මෙතන තියෙන්නේ. Have you watched that clip of Johnny Depp where he puts the mic in the anyway?
That's good. He's
Yeah,
going into Pirates of the Caribbean.
Anyway, yeah, about this movie, there is this specific movie of a. I'm gonna very in 2 minutes tell you the story. It's of a roadside accident that happens where 5 people were killed by speeding drunk rich person,
Okay.
rich boy, right? Okay. So they hire the best lawyer they can get, obviously. And then that bugger is a Supreme Court lawyer, comes into like a High Court level case, and then basically proves that the
drunk guy is not guilty.
No, the drunk guy was somewhere else, and the vehicle was not a Land Rover, but the vehicle was not a Fortuner, but a lorry. They changed the full plot. But this one random lawyer, just like a small time lawyer, puts a public litigation and brings the case back up, like months later, like when the decision is about to be given. And then they bring various evidence to court and says out of the 6 people who were killed, 1 person is actually alive, and they've issued a death state certificate of
Oh, yeah.
Marna Sahatika.
Marana
Right?
Sahatika.
And
Death certificate.
Death certificate. And they bring them back and they bring that person to court.
Oh.
And then the lawyer still argues that that's still fake evidence, that they basically paid some random guy and all of that. And then at the end, like the final 10 minutes of the movie is where it gets, so the judge decides. The judge is very impartial, obviously. They respect
Of course, they will be.
yeah. So they bring this whole thing up where the final submission is going to decide. It's certain that that this guy has killed. I mean, they show him killing right at the start of the movie, and then but they made the movie in a way you see the opening shot of that bugger driving over 5 people in this case. That guy goes off, but throughout the movie, obviously the acting matters here, and it's like a very senior actor who's the senior lawyer from the other side. Throughout the movie, you are questioning yourself. You're like, okay, but did he wait? Could he be? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They've done it so well that it's, and then at the end of the movie, right at the end, this lawyer, the high level lawyer, says, I apologize and I'm sorry to say this, but these people sleep on the platform, the pavement, and if you sleep on the pavement, this is what happens, you die. I mean, it's a normal, that sort of thing. And then he's like, this is a joke, right? This court case is a joke, and he goes on. And the other lawyer, the small time guy, says, you know, why do these people sleep in the platform, right? These people come from all that. And he says, if you can't, this guy said, if you sleep on the platform, this is what happens, sort of. So can you drive on the platform? Is that what you're saying? And then he goes, and the judge says, from day one, we knew who the murderer was. We knew what happened. And, but I am a judge, and I have to base it on evidence. And, you know, you have been changing evidence left, right, and center. You've been saying the Fortuner was a truck, the driver was somewhere else, and all that. But every time you brought it up, you manipulated the system so much. If this guy wasn't the culprit, why would you do all of that? And then that last 10 minutes makes you realize lots of things, like about how people get manipulated, how you can manipulate the system, how, you know, how people are taken for shit and granted, you know what I mean? So that whole thing makes you understand. Now we are also close by, you know what I mean? India is right there, Sri Lanka is right here. We speak Tamil here, they speak Tamil there. And then you all of a sudden immediately make a connection. This is like, you know, it feels like home sort of connection. And then that hits you, that takes you to a next different level. And then that keeps you there. You tend to think, okay, what if that happens here? Same thing, right? And the emotions they portray,
Sure, yeah.
you know, all those help. Like,
But I think most of us have had some sort of similar experience with at least one or two movies, you know, in our
Sleepers
lifetime.
would be one
right?
for me, yeah.
So for me, it was Predestination, but then like the realization was more science fiction based rather than real life based, right? Yeah. I want to get back to the run the there's a reason for this, right? And I'll get to the point of it because I really want to stress on this particular point, right? Because it relates to the masses of this country, right? Now,
Not to condemn the masses, by the way, just a disclaimer. This is not condemning.
No, when I say the masses, I mean everyone, right? You and me included, right?
What I'm trying to say is we are not condemning them to watching this.
No, not at all, right? So I guess it's a generally accepted thing that Sri Lankans can be very dramatic, right? Now, where does this come from? Is what I'm asking, right? And
we are not a nation who was dramatic. We are
not as much.
I don't. Sons of Vijay.
I don't suppose so, right?
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is there's a connection to these Hindi soap dramas that were so popular and received by the masses during a particular time in our country that turned us into these dramatic creatures that we are of today, right?
And I believe that had a big influence on the film industry in Sri Lanka as well.
Correct.
Even right now, I see songs which are being produced, which have such a, as in you can see that effect, the
influence from those Bollywood, the Bollywood,
the Bollywood,
Collywood, there's a lot of
yeah.
the Bollywood effect so much in Sri Lanka.
That Sri Lanka is called Hellawood. No, seriously.
Okay.
Are we? Okay, wow.
I see.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Did not know that.
Do we have enough movies to be
We have a
call
very
that.
serious film industry, but yeah, we'll get to our film industry.
Yeah. You were saying, yeah.
No, so I mean, we don't have an identity for ourselves when it comes to that sense.
We've been shaped by the content which we were exposed to, which were the Hindi content, right? The stuff we got from India, basically.
So I mean, when it comes to the world, there aren't things called, there isn't a pure race, there isn't a pure culture, because everything has been mixed.
Hitler certainly thought
the Aryan blood, right?
So,
Hitler certainly thought that.
So I have German roots, but let's not go there.
Oh wow.
Yeah, her name is
German as in,
Chaucer.
are you a Jew? Or
She's the great grandchild of Hitler, basically.
No.
So we're gonna.
Is he alive?
She has a swastika tattoo here.
The conspiracy is that Hitler's still alive. Though.
Are you a Jew by any chance? Is that why she hates you?
No, but it's actually a proper conspiracy that Hitler was alive until 1995 in Buenos Aires in Argentina.
Okay, back to soap dramas, right? So my point was, it was the entire country that was exposed to it, and this trend was island-wide, right? Yeah. Everyone in Colombo to people in a random village, if they had access to a TV, right? They watched this, right? They this is what they watched, right?
Yeah.
From our parents to the freaking Vedas, if they had a TV in their village huts, they would have watched these Hindi soap dramas, right?
Would, but yeah.
රෑ 4ට පටන් ගත්ත යටටද?
7 ඉඳන් 9 නේ.
Because that's the ideal time anyway. That's
So
the
now in the වැදි ගම්මානේ අර ටීවී පොජ්ජ දාන්න.
exactly somewhere in the Vadi village. TV පොජ්ජ ගෝන් කරපු.
ටීවී පොජ්ජ මන්දු කරන්න.
That's
ටීවී පොජ්ජ මන්දු කරන්න. අන්න හරි වචන.
meanwhile in the Vadi village.
Meanwhile in the Vadi.
Anyway, so that's what I'm saying. So now we have been, I mean, our brains have been, twisted and turned into accepting these, these Hindi dramas, these soap dramas from South India, North India as to part of our culture now. I'm pretty sure most of our mums, were fascinated by the saris that these, ladies wore in these.
I believe.
Yeah.
I believe we have
Oh,
a
I
girl
see.
in the audience who's.
Why is it fat?
I believe Desiree is also influenced by that though. But
by the
saris.
saris that were worn by.
are you not? You're saying you're
women.
Like I said before,
we're not condemning you.
No, I mean, fine, saris.
I mean, they were
okay.
nice. Okay,
Yeah,
we have
yeah.
to
They were nice
accept it.
sarees,
They
yeah.
were nice, but they were too extravagant to be worn on a daily basis.
And they used to sleep with those same saris and all the
For I
jewelry,
don't know,
right?
for God reasons, yes.
And like for the like the 3,000 episodes, the grandmother was alive.
Oh yeah.
That's also true. That's
Yeah.
also true.
All right.
not.
So my point is,
that's basically the serial killer in Desiree coming out. But thank you, Desiree, for that.
you wanted the grandmother to die, perish.
Or maybe kill
Come
her.
on.
No,
I think she was a great grandmother.
Why did you do the evil laugh though after that? That's the problem.
No, it's like this.
Oh my good God!
Wow,
I remember
That
evil
was-
and evil.
that was creepy. Wow.
Devil wears Prada.
SMS තෝරන්න කරන්න බෑ. SMS තෝරන්න.
Okay. Getting back to the point, right? So, like, even if you take the main characters, right, the heroine and the hero, right? Like, let's say the main characters, the couple, right? So now
I like heroin.
a lot of yeah, that's another episode, much right?
That's whole other
Okay,
episode. And it's not. That's cocaine.
Yeah,
That's Eric
that's a
Clapton.
whole other session.
That's a song by. That's a,
No, we
that's
will.
a song
we
by
will-
Eric Clapton.
We will talk about all that in another session for sure, right? So many people we can invite. What is that?
What's
laugh?
with you?
Anyway, right. So as I was saying, right?
Are you high on weed? What type of weed are you high on?
Okay. Let me get to the point, right? Let's not
Sugar.
deviate from the point here. The point was
Sorry.
a lot of young girls in our country were influenced by these main characters, that couple, right? The man and the woman, right? And a lot of something I noticed, right? Not everyone, it was a minority, right? But like that minority I'm talking about were looking for characters in a man very similar to the character of the main guy in the
Right,
Hindi
that's
serial. And that
non-existent.
main guy, if you look at his character, right, it was very very stereotypical and very simple, right? He was I mean, he was a guy who was well off, and I mean, that's just one characteristic I'm referring to. But then there was so many other, characteristics which were very stereotypical that this minority of girls that I'm talking about, looked for in other men, right? Same with guys, right?
Did
So,
we?
so I guess like now,
I
if
don't
you
think
take
we did.
if you take the main character of the couple, right, the woman, right, she would she would obey by the rules of the grandmother, the in-laws.
of course.
She would like cook in her sari 24/7. Like she would be very obedient. What. So okay, anyway, that was the interesting thing that I saw there in the book. Anyway, so my point is, we have all been influenced to some extent by these soap dramas that were made so popular by this stupid ass TV channel for some stupid ass reason.
I wouldn't condemn the TV channel.
එක
Just yet.
channel එකක් නෙමෙයි යකෝ ලංකාවේ.
Yeah,
No,
but
no,
what channel started this trend?
Who started it? That's
Who
the problem.
started is
We
my
set
question,
the-
right?
we
Okay.
set the trend, Masan. Others follow. We can't help it.
Okay, you're the.
You can't talk on behalf of your
No,
own
no, I'm
channel.
not.
I'm just saying.
No, it was. I mean, I don't blame it on channel. I don't blame it on people. It's just something that happened, right?
Yeah.
There were so many
Let's
things that
move on.
factored into it.
There are new cool things coming up this year.
And then like
This is not a platform for advertisement for your media channel.
Sorry.
so now
We don't pay you.
Like we talked in like we talked in last week's episode, people are thankfully moving out of televised programs, moving into online platforms like Netflix, YouTube, what you name it, right? So
and sometime before there was
again,
this one platform called iFlix, no more, but
yeah.
God rest his soul.
Who worked there? Anyone who worked there?
Desiree did.
Desiree. Was it Desiree? Yeah.
She was hired on
No.
Tinder.
Desiree was hired
She was basically the owner of it.
She owned Tinder.
of Tinder.
She owned it. Of course. But yeah.
I'm
You want to say something?
yes.
Yes.
Everything that was said right now is untrue.
So
Every-
you're not a part
That's-
of
that's
you're not a
your-
part of SS.
like saying මම අර ෆිල්ම් එකක් බලලා එකපාරට ෆිල්ම් එකකට හිනේ නැගිට්ටා වගේ.
Yeah.
All that
This is all based on fiction. All the characters named here are not based on real life people. Okay. Anyway, so that was my point, right? That is one great example. These Hindi soap dramas are one great example of how things we are exposed to, especially movies and TV shows, can influence
I tend to
everything.
disagree. No, okay, I partially agree.
Okay.
But do you remember there was this time where
There's also the point of Sri Lankan people being very gullible, but that's a different
no,
story.
exactly where I'm trying to go.
Yeah.
You remember where we tried to air on Sri Lankan television Korean dramas?
Oh, that
I
was,
have
I
not
was
watched.
going to touch on that subject as
Yeah.
well. So now we've moved out of Hindi soap dramas into Korean dramas. Now
yeah,
that's
and
the
then
trend, right?
now I've like seen fashion inspired by Korean type fashion on the road.
I know
Food.
people.
Guys
I
with
know a lot of
emo
people
hairs.
who
And even
talk
food.
Korean now
And even
because
food.
I know a lot of people who talk Korean now because of
You
the
know,
K-pops.
you know, there is a business angle to it, no?
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah, of course.
Apart from the,
It's
apart from
ratings,
the
yeah.
no, apart from the, don't look at it from the channel's point of view or the entertainment value of it. Like people learning Korean has an impact on the economy because there are Korean immigrants, Korean migrant
But
workers.
the recent outbreak of coronavirus brought them all back. But yeah,
No, yeah, but you know,
We
that
have to mention
overall,
that,
overall, people who make these decisions, who are in key positions
Yeah.
in the
Yes,
country,
indeed,
make
indeed.
these decisions
Indeed.
based on those requirements.
Yeah.
We needed a time where Hindi drama was needed to come here to inspire the local cinema.
Yeah.
Because we can't all of a sudden look at like somewhere like England or USA to
Yeah.
start our movies. So we needed, you know, motivation to start our own, like boost it again,
Yeah.
which helped. Like how many
Oh, for
Sinhalese movies have you
We're
seen?
talking about the 60s, the 70s,
So even as of late, like even the
even
early
as of late.
2000s.
Okay.
How many Hindi remakes of movies have we seen in the
Yeah,
past
of
10
course.
years, past decade? We've seen a lot.
Yeah.
yeah,
right?
true enough.
Lot of has.
Oh,
like,
sure.
I'm interested that you mentioned this. So you said that Predestination is some of the one of the favorite movies that you
One of
watched.
the most thought-provoking and
But
one
you
of the
know
most
that
interesting movies I watched,
Predestination,
yes.
the whole plot was there in a separate movie in the 1950s.
What's the
called sequel to prequel
prequel to
Predestination. Yeah. So
I
I'll
doubt
get
it,
you the
but-
name. I'll get
okay.
you the name. But that was there before, and there was this interesting podcast that
yeah.
I was listening to.
Okay.
I think I explained it to you. So it's about the 10 movies that changed the course of filmmaking,
Okay.
and that I think that's also relevant at this point of time. So what we assume one of the greatest of all time by Quentin Tarantino is Pulp Fiction, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
like Pulp Fiction. I don't know.
That's a cult classic anyway.
Yeah, so it's it's the whole.
I mean, a lot of people might not have, a lot of listeners might not have seen the movie. That's fine. Like I said, like we don't have to watch every single movie out
Yeah.
there, right?
It's the Ezekiel speech that made it for me.
Yeah.
But so it goes on a non-linear chain of events. If you understood. But this podcast talks about it being starting off in 1941 by Citizen Kane,
Right.
which also carried out a non-linear and an uncentered kind of way of filmmaking. So the point that I'm trying to get across is that when we've been brought up in a way that the cinema, the ones that we saw at least, are sort of the films like Pulp Fiction, sort of the films like Godfather, and sort of the films who way back in the day were the greats, right? The 1990s, the 1980s, the 1970s, which were the great ones back then. And for me, at least, the music that I've listened to, I must say, still the ones that I listen to the most and I enjoy the most are in that era. And the reason why is because I've been brought up in an environment where I was watching all those movies, right? So my favorite band of all time is Queen. Of course. Who doesn't like Queen?
Everyone's favorite band of all time is Queen after the movie.
No,
was
no,
released.
I think it's
for
all the
me-
bridge for you.
For me, it's still Led Zeppelin. That will never change till the day I die. But
Me, it's 77-fold.
Yeah. For
Right.
me, it's Queen.
okay.
So,
yeah.
You are a queen, man.
thanks.
You're the queen.
But you're the Samanala.
I got no.
But
Nah, eba. Gio can leave that.
so,
You're gonna need. Hey.
so for me, at least for me, in some ways, I still think of myself from the past. If you catch my grift, if I'm if
Okay.
you get
You
what I'm
define
saying.
yourself from the movies you saw at
Exactly,
one period of your
exactly.
life.
I don't. Even though I work in a basis where evolution of technology is eminent and every day,
Yeah.
my whole mindset is in the 1970s.
I think it's true to.
That's not a drum roll moment. Thanks, but
It's
But
true
I
for me
think-
as
I
well
think that's true
to
enough.
some extent.
yeah.
Because most of the music that I listen to are still from the 70s and the 80s,
Led
right?
Zeppelin.
The classic rock. But then when it comes to music, I try not to stick to one genre. So now these movies, what's popular at the moment, right? In pop culture has changed from time to time. At one point it was westerns, at one point it was rom-coms. Then it became science fiction when the Star Wars movies came out. Now it's superhero movies. We are in the age of superhero movies, and that's the thing right now.
Exactly,
Right?
exactly.
But it's dying, no? It's going back to
It might.
something
It
else.
might. It might.
I like
What do you think it might
back
go
in
back
the,
to?
the Wild Wild West.
Or is it? What do you think it might go into?
I think people are just looking at like Netflix now currently. I think people are looking at more
Crime.
I
Okay.
think so.
documentary-based,
Thrillers,
yeah,
basically.
but no,
Okay.
things that are
okay.
factual.
Factual,
Not,
okay.
not
But yeah,
Disney.
so
Interesting that you said that because I saw in the morning that Netflix has this Ottoman.
Yeah, I've been
Yeah.
watching it. That's me watching it. Stop forwarding it. Someone
I
is
finished
forwarding
it.
it.
I finished it.
Now, first of
Sorry.
all,
you
who's
all are sharing a Netflix account.
Yeah.
It's my account.
Oh, so all are parasiting on him.
No, about
Both of
7
them. Both
people
of them.
on. Not just us, like a lot of other people on
That's
it.
7,
Your
that's
sister is
21
on it.
and
people. on it.
there's someone watching Peppa Pig on your account.
Oh my.
Thank you for bringing that up. I don't know who.
There, masa mau
Maybe my son.
guest account take
Maybe I am watching it subconsciously.
So like on Netflix, like you said about crime and all of that, and people are focusing more on the factual things and what will happen in the future, stuff like that. And so I started watching Messiah on Netflix.
Don't watch it. Don't watch it.
Yeah.
We didn't hear the end of it for two days from Chaturanga. We didn't hear the end of it.
I mean, we were all looking forward to watching it, but then this guy ruined
This
it for
guy
us.
beat
so-
it.
No, I
Yeah,
didn't. I
it
didn't
was.
tell you the end. Don't lie.
No, you said it
You
was-
did?
No,
you
but
did
a
tell
lot
us
of
then.
people like it. Do you know that they've got a lot of ratings on the
Well,
ending?
it's the second coming of Messiah.
No, it's not.
I don't know what it is.
Yeah,
I
it's-
don't care.
Yeah, it's,
But
it's,
I'm not gonna watch it.
it's-
It's ruined for me.
After he ruined it for us.
I mean, a lot of people.
No, it's
I
not the
didn't
plot.
like it.
It's not the plot. Basically, you didn't like it. Okay.
I didn't.
I mean, like,
but enjoy Messiah. Okay.
no, exactly. It's all relative, right? Like, I don't know if you would like it. Like,
So I'm still on. I've
okay.
still not
You can't- you
completed
can't-
it. So.
you can't decide yet.
We
So
are ruining
at
it
the
for-
end,
At the very end, someone
he
dies.
dies.
Okay.
No.
No, I'm kidding. He does.
Yeah, but he doesn't.
I knew that you were not going to ruin it for me. So
Ruining it for the internet.
For the viewers.
No,
died.
but interesting
Someone dies.
what she said. And Netflix is not the first to bring up this whole factual and what happened in the past kind of thing. It was HBO.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the greatest of all time is Chernobyl.
Okay,
I mean that series in itself
Mm.
was so good
It
that
was
it showed the
the harsh reality of
harsh reality of a nuclear meltdown.
Russia is making their own.
version of it.
No, I mean
In which
yeah,
they will
Russia-
blame the US, of course.
Yeah, so who would
I'm sure it
blame
was the
who?
US.
It doesn't matter.
I blame the
Chernobyl happened. That's what I'm trying to say. Chernobyl happened, and to this day, that is bigger reaction than Hiroshima and Nagasaki, because that to this date, there are people affected by it because they didn't control that whole explosion. Because USSR back in the day, God rest Putin's soul.
He's alive.
He's alive. Or Lenin or Stalin, whoever who was back in the day. They tried to cover up, saying that this is not a blast. But
they tried their best to contain it so that the news would not get out, and it would be bad PR for them, obviously.
But what ended up happening was a lot of people getting contaminated by it, that the whole air pollution.
As a
and
result.
thing. Yeah. So we were thinking, or rather, and there will be a separate episode on this World War III, sorry. Where what World War III would be and what it will be based on. But a lot of people thought that World War III will come when Trump tried to declare war against Iran, which would not happen.
That
because
is a
Iran is not that dumb. So even though Trump is, Iran is not that dumb. But so what I'm trying to say is that the whole way that we perceive, or whole way of destruction that we see, is given to us beforehand by all of these factual documentaries. And for me, that makes much more sense of watching it at a given time, like you said before, than watching something like Big Bang Theory. Yeah, when you have time.
And when you have more and more stuff, like for example, as you said, everything that we watched is based on the US or the British history. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like how the British colonized half of the world, or how the Roman Empire. It's very European,
but Ottoman
that's right.
redefines that. Yes.
Ottoman is from
It's
I
Mehmed II.
mean, if you take a very popular movie like Rambo, right? Obviously, Rambo is a hero and he kills all these Vietnam
Rambo is
soldiers,
fictional,
right? And then that's justified because he's the hero, right? Obviously, it was Rambo. Obviously,
it's
Rambo
not
was
manslaughter or first degree
that's
murder.
a movie that was specifically made to romanticize the fact that they were at war, and then the US was doing the right thing by attacking the Vietnamese.
Exactly, and I'm coming back to that now. Watchmen initially.
Yeah.
Watchmen made.
Do not get me started on that.
I'm not getting you started on that. But what I'm saying is, they made Vietnam the 51st state.
Yes.
In that
TV
movie.
show.
In the TV show. Sorry.
Yeah.
But in the TV show also defined Vietnam as not a colony that is under the US. What I'm trying to say, they are resisting. Right?
Yeah, sure.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
there's resistance from the US in itself, from the Black KKK. And all of that. So whoever who's not watched it, sorry about that.
Shall we ruin it for you?
Yeah.
He dies.
Who
That's
dies?
actually
You
true.
wouldn't know.
But we didn't say who, right? Okay.
Yeah, I didn't say who. It might be Rocher. So what I'm trying,
It might be Rochelle. Who's Rochelle? Rorschach.
Rorschach.
Right.
It might be Rorschach.
I said Rocher.
Rorschach.
Okay.
But yeah, so I'm not trying to get you hooked on the whole thing.
Yeah.
But that's the TV series actually can be taken as educational, because that actually addresses a real time issue.
No, that's very important. Watchmen addresses like a lot of issues.
Even
that
even though it's action based and it's superhero
yeah,
based.
Though it's a comic book based TV show.
They address racial issues.
Exactly,
They address feminism.
Sexism.
Sexism. is the
I
word.
mean, Wonder Woman would have been the first movie to ever produce that.
But that was a cliche. We
that's
knew
a
that was
cliche.
like,
Right.
okay, Wonder Woman, okay.
Yes.
Like, but bringing that in a subject like Watchmen, that's
like
talent.
so
Yeah.
the main character is a black woman who's
And
black mother,
ends up
actually.
becoming
No,
a very
you
important
shouldn't
character.
ruin
No,
it for
ends up becoming a very important character in the TV
Ends
show.
up becoming a very
Oh, by the way, you know that there isn't a season 2, right?
Yeah,
They cancelled the
that's
show.
it. Yeah,
They cancel the show.
Which
They should
is
have. They
Even
so you
Messiah
can't.
Day has no season 2.
What I'm trying to say is
One
that
only.
these content that actually speaks the truth
Okay.
would not have a place
Okay.
in the world,
You're right.
right?
Yeah.
You are
In
right.
terms of, because now see, that's why HBO was a mini series for Chernobyl, because
Yeah.
they knew the backlash that will come from Russia.
Well, obviously, yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
but
And
HBO is bigger than Russia, so to be honest, so so they don't care.
Like
And Putin don't kill me. But yeah,
Putin doesn't watch YouTube. He gets it in his brain directly.
Putin has two of the greatest hackers of all time. With him.
Yeah, he's also
One
the
included Lucky
fifth
1, 2, 3, 4,
most
5.
protected human being on planet.
On
Fifth.
planet? Fifth.
No, number one is guess.
Mahinda
Trump is
Rajapaksa. No, go down. No.
Well, can we go into conspiracies?
No, you can't.
No,
You
no.
don't have time.
Rothschild and Rockefeller?
So wait, speaking about K-pop and how this, because like you said, decision-making people know when to bring what in, like because they are the ones who obviously give the permission for those to be broadcasted. I know of a person who has this group where they do this program named, I think, something to do with the mind, as mind education.
Okay.
So it's a Korean group who is doing it. So they have better, as in recognition and access to like authorities and all of that,
Yeah.
because like Sri Lanka is used to Korean people and the Korean kind of thing.
Corona.
Not me. Don't
Not
point at me.
Yeah.
I'm not used to it.
I know, so even I'm not a fan of Korean drama, but what I'm trying to say is when the majority are familiar, let's
Sure.
say
Sure.
someone, a Korean nationality is
Yeah.
addressing a crowd, people will be like, okay, fine, never mind.
Korean. Yeah.
We've seen this kind of a person on TV, so we're seeing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the
So-
Chinese population, the increasing Chinese population in Sri Lanka is not a threat or not seen as a threat by a lot of people because we've been watching Korean drama and
Yeah.
we perceive them more Korean or non-violent or
Right.
non-colonizational.
Why do you guys think? Let me ask this: why do you guys think that K-dramas became so popular? Like, was it forced upon by the media, or like was it like, and was it a number of different factors? Do you think it's young girls who like these?
It's more appealing to the younger generation, obviously, more
Yeah.
than the old. So I guess like we were when coming on the way, we were speaking about how this Billie Eilish won 5 Grammys this time. So her music is more appealing
Yeah,
to the
sure.
young crowd compared
Yeah.
to the old. So in the same way, Korean drama is appealing to the younger crowd in this country compared to the old. So obviously the younger ones are the ones who will grow up and they are the future, right?
Yeah.
So
But did the
that's how-
masses pick it up because that was the only option given to them?
No, I
by
think
the-
I think it was
I guess
more
it
so.
was something different compared
Yes.
to what we
That's what I was
used.
going for,
Right.
and also the concept of for the girls at least, and I've heard this from numerous friends, which I don't want to mention right now. Are the concept of flower boys?
Girls, you get it to me.
No, sorry. It is the concept of flower boys.
Flower boys.
Yeah, flower boys are basically these boys who look like girls who doesn't have as much masculinity.
They're very feminine men, basically.
Yes,
Right.
but they look pretty good apparently.
Hi,
I mean, they
Gio.
look. Hi, Gio. No, we are not saying that you're a flower boy, but you have potential. That's what I'm saying.
Do you? So, I think there's the fancy term is heterosexuals, right? Basically,
I
men
think
who
so.
act. I mean,
No,
men who
I think
have embraced
metrosexual.
their femininity as well.
I think
I think
metro-
they are-
No, that's not heterosexual.
that's something else.
That's
Yeah,
not
that's
heterosexual.
something else.
So we are heterosexual, as in being attracted to the
Attracted to
opposite.
opposite.
No, there is a.
What I'm saying is
okay.
metrosexual.
Metrosexual, right?
yeah,
that's
and
that's the
Metro
word.
okay,
Right?
adisexual, not metrosexual.
Metro ke anaga
Yeah,
mana.
so these men are metrosexual,
Right.
and they are heterosexual too because they are not gay.
Yeah.
But the
They
other
could be. We don't mind. I mean,
yeah,
we don't
I mean we don't discriminate. No, Jesus Christ, no. So, but they could be lesbians also. But what I'm saying is, there is this concept of how different a man would be from the normal macho Rambos that we see,
Right. Yeah.
right? And that's what appeals to these girls because that's a different of opinion. I mean, you've seen Sylvester Stallone kick the shit out of Apollo on Rocky. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you define as being a man,
Right.
or Godfather
So,
saying
the
verse that
definition
he
of
says.
the ideal partner or the ideal man has changed in cinema over the years and has
what
been picked
I'm
up
trying
differently.
to say is that it's not the change of ideal man. People perceive
Yeah, I
ideal
mean, obviously
men
it's
in
different.
a different
but
way.
like in pop culture.
Yeah,
right? I
no,
mean,
but
there
the
was a-
interest, what
Okay,
you
okay.
mentioned was the interest
Okay.
for these K-dramas is the whole difference of men
Yeah,
that
how
they see.
men have been portrayed.
Exactly.
Right.
Interesting.
Okay,
That's
that
very interesting.
exactly
So
the
like
answer I
coming
was
to
trying to
think
get.
of it, even I'm beginning to think, okay, that may be the reason why it is so appealing,
Right.
because we are so used to wanting to see a man as strong, brave, macho kind of thing, but
Sylvester Stallone.
Right. Yeah.
yeah, but like in this K-drama, it shows a very different side of a man, and I guess all girls don't want men to be that.
Yeah.
No, I think I don't know. This is speaking
not
me.
a girl.
It's me speaking out of context. But I think girls nowadays, being metrosexual and being exposed to metrosexuality, what they want is the two different sides of men. It's more sort of a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of scenario that they want
So
being
the macho
exposed to.
and the emotional.
The being exposed to these kind of K-dramas and all that. They want the difference.
So I mean, I haven't seen a lot of K-dramas. So are the men in
I've
these
not either.
K-dramas like very emotional, sensitive, that sort of thing?
Kinda, no?
Kind
Are
of.
they? I don't.
I
Never watched
Okay,
in
I
my
don't
life.
think so. We are
Yeah.
here. Anyone can talk here, but
Yeah,
we
yeah,
just
yeah.
We
talk
don't know.
only about the assumptions and things
Yeah,
we have heard.
we are talking out of assumption.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah. So if there is anyone who knows about K-dramas, please feel free to share
Yeah,
your
just-
thoughts.
Yeah, I
Just
mean, if we
shoot
are
us a
wrong, just say,
few of them.
fuck it, Chaturanga, you're wrong. Like, go get a life. I mean, just say it. That's fine. On the comments.
at the end? They all die.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Can we talk about this damn topic? I mean,
What's that? Why
Why
we
we
sleep.
Oh,
I
that
think-
was going to be one of
that's-
our topics, no?
You suggested this, right? You want to talk about sleeping patterns, right? It's still in the bag, Mashan. It's still in the bag, so we'll pick it
Yeah.
up soon.
Potakut
soon enough.
hoyagatha.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
just want to wrap up the whole thing.
Yeah.
So as we've all four of us mentioned, we've been influenced by movies and TV shows all throughout our lives, and I think we live in a separate world entirely in our heads due to the different media that is exposed to us.
Sure.
Because I know that I do, and this is not for me to say that I'm mental, but I might be. Thank you for that. But so the different stages in life that you're exposed to these kind of things maybe redefine the way that people are and their thinking patterns.
Yeah.
And that's what matters. I think in terms of in a philanthropic way, the difference of men or difference of human beings as a whole used to be back in the day due to their education and their social background, but not that is not the case anymore.
Yeah.
As at least that's not a main factor anymore.
Right.
And the main factor now seems to be the movies and the TV shows and the media that we are exposed to.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Before we wrap up, just one very important point I forgot to mention in our discussion. So there's a guy who worked at my previous company, right? He's from a very rural background, so but his English was better than anyone at our office, right?
Oh, wow.
Better than mine, better than the country managers, right? And how did he learn English?
movies.
Gaming.
Really?
Gaming, right? He used to be an avid gamer. He still is. So he used to play online games and communicate with people outside of Sri Lanka. And even in these video games, there's a storyline. Like it's not just attack, shoot, kill,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
You need to understand the storyline to proceed to the next level in the particular game, right? His English, his grammar, his vocabulary, everything was perfect, much better than all of us. And this guy wasn't I'm pretty sure the schools that he went to, which were in a far off place, weren't
Are not
like that
bourgeois.
good. That weren't.
Are not
the
from the
English
bougie
education
ones
weren't that great, right?
yeah.
Compared to Columbus schools and all that. But his English was so much better than ours, and he just learned the language. He learned a language through gaming.
Yeah.
So that's a perfect example of how the content we are exposed to can change your education and make you, give you knowledge,
a
right?
better person. So it depends on how you take the media that is exposed to you, and then learn from it, right? And honestly, it was also movies for me as well. And
It
I
was
learned how
movies
to
for me
speak
as well.
English.
Correct, correct. Yeah.
So wrapping everything up, I think in terms of how we are, all four of us and Jivaka, the flower boy potential, perceive us
boy.
in our lives is through the upbringing that we've got from movies and TV shows. And is it so? I think you went to media business because of these things.
One of the.
He
it would
just
have been-
wanted to
it
be a
would have been
celebrity.
influence, certainly, right?
No, Chaturanga, you just want to be a
I was a
celebrity, no?
celebrity the day I was born. That's
Were
why
you?
they released the movie A Star Is Born. You know what happens
It's
at the end
based.
of it? He dies.
It's based on you.
You need to sing "Shallow" for us to believe that.
I need the Lady Gaga and all stuff.
I'm here.
You have her support.
Yeah, does he can't pull
Yeah. So, just wrapping it up, I think that's our discussion for the day. Just want to let you know that you can subscribe and like our video if you like what
Hit
we
a
do.
big thumbs up.
Yep. And also put a comment down below if you think
Wait. Tech guy is saying something. Yeah, tech guy.
That guy.
Asha.
Yeah,
apparently.
Bravo.
Okay.
all of that, and then put a comment down below of the topics that you think that you would like to hear. Not sleeping patterns, Chaturanga. We all know that you like
Anything
sleeping.
but that, guys.
Anything
Okay.
but that.
Yeah.
Anything
White
but that.
camera. Close.
But thanks for everyone joining in.
Yep.
Thank you for your time, guys.
you.
And see you next week.
Cool.
K-pop to
See
the
you guys.
rescue.